As you know, we've unfortunately have relied, and this is nothing new, on shifting payments to schools, making them cope for a time, well, without cutting the actual dollars they receive, but affecting the timing of when they receive them. We've done this a number of times over the years, including quite heavily in the fiscal year 2010 and 2011. It went from 90-10 to 73-27 in fiscal year 2010 and to 70-30 in fiscal year 2011. This bill will, as I said, will restore it to 70-30, which was what it was at the beginning of this biennium. We have already, because of two positive budget forecasts, reduced that amount from 60-40, or increased it up to 64.3 to 35.7. Because of the amount that was left after filling the cash flow and the budget reserve. So that bit of progress has been made. Those payments, I believe, started going out to the schools this month. And what this bill would do is to increase that by another $415 million.
Well, Mr. President, in the Finance Committee, Minnesota Management and Budget said this was a very bad idea, and they opposed it. You know, we had very good legislation when it directed the first money showing up going to the cash flow account and the reserve account. By taking over $400 million out of there, we are jeopardizing the next year or two. We're going to be adding to the $1.1 billion deficit of the next biennium, but we don't know for sure what's going to happen to the economy over the next few months. A lot of things in this world are very precarious. Something could happen in Iran and the price of gasoline go to $5, and we could have a real dip in the money coming in. If things go very well, as we hope they will, next November we can probably come up with some more money to go to the school age shift. But that would be done in a very responsible manner. This is a very irresponsible manner, and the bond companies, I'm sure, are looking at this, and they see that we're going back on our word of replenishing the reserve accounts. So it's a very irresponsible action, and I oppose it.
As I've been going through life, I've been told that running up my credit card to the maximum is not a good idea. And it seems to me that's what we were doing on the state of Minnesota last year, because not only did we borrow from the school kids at 60-40 as a result of you not being able to see the way the governor was thinking, but we also used the bond to make one-time payments, and we're going to be paying back for over 20 years. That's going to cost us twice as much as the bond did. And so the school kids are going to ultimately be paying for the bond in the long run also.
You know, the truth of the matter is that this is what a family would do in Minnesota. If they had money in the savings account and they had a credit card, they'd pay back as much of it as they could, as soon as they could, if they were good fiscal stewards. And in a lot of ways, you know, we know that's out there, and we want to pay back as much as we can, and be fiscally responsible about it. Leave some money in the account, and pay back what we can. So I think it's a responsible thing to do when you compare it to that situation.
In the Education Committee, I offered an amendment to the proposal that would have paid back the remainder of the school shift by closing corporate tax loopholes. And while there's a lot of back and forth about who is responsible for what portion of the shift, I think that it's important to keep in mind that the schools across this district, across the state of Minnesota, the school districts that each of us represent, are relying on us as adults, as the legislators, as the legislature of the state of Minnesota, to provide fair and adequate funding for our public schools. And what the bill before us does today is risky, in that it relies on budget reserves instead of new source of revenue to pay back our shift.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to also remind members that while we are using some of the reserves to reduce the borrowing from the school shift, I think that is appropriate. I think it is prudent. And I have looked at some of the history of these accounts, the cash flow and the reserve accounts over the past number of years. And this amount of money that we would leave in those accounts at the conclusion of paying back part of the shift that was the effect of the budget we passed last year would still leave the reserves at a higher amount than in the past 17 years. There's only been, I think, 7 other years where they've had a higher amount than what we would leave in those reserves after this payback would take place.